down and Barack Obama won't be there. So for the trade embargo to be lifted, it's not going to happen during President Obama's White House tenure or Raul Castro. But this is beyond a thaw. Suddenly American Airlines is going to be having flights to the United States. We're going to be having educational groups going down to take tours of the Bay of Pigs, or where Theodore Roosevelt fought at the Battle of Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill, and movies and music. So I think that this is more than just an opening salvo. I think this is a main moment in American history.
All right, Professor, let's pause right there. There is President Obama and the First Lady. We also know they have their kids and Michelle Obama's mother as well. There is Malia, I think we just saw. Yep. So they're getting ready to come out in the rain, a little bit unexpected. Certainly it's a step up from what they were dealing with in D.C., which is snow. But here comes the President of the United States and his family. He's about 30 steps away from touching down on soil that many felt an American president would never touch on.
I don't think anybody watching this in Cuba isn't moved, and probably a lot of people in the United States. Yeah, there's going to be a before and after to this trip and to this moment.
And you wanted a rain metaphor. President Obama is really opening up the floodgates here. I mean, this is a momentous thing that we're watching right now. Who would have thought that the President of the United States would be shaking hands with Cuban officials? I know, Patrick, when you took this job in Havana, you probably thought, is this ever going to change on my watch? That's what every Cuban correspondent says when they get stationed in Havana. Is it ever going to happen on my watch? And it happened on your watch.
And here we are.
And here we are.
And seeing the First Lady shaking the Cuban foreign minister's hand, he probably never thought that he would receive them at the airport.
Absolutely.
And for Cubans who are watching this live in Cuba, to see this kind of red carpet treatment for the hated enemy.
The flowers that we're seeing here, any cultural significance to that, or is it just what it seems like, just a nice gesture?
Just a nice gesture, but this is something very Cuban, that you meet your guests at the airport. And again, Cuban officials, we're seeing Josefina Vidal greet the First Lady. That's the top Cuban diplomat for U.S. affairs, who was kicked out of the United States as part of a spying scandal. Gustavo Machin, the diplomat shaking hands with the president, he can't go to the United States. He was kicked out of the United States over a spying scandal as well. There's a lot of spy games.
Ambassador to the U.S., Cabañas, there.
Yes. Now, who is not there, Jim and Patrick, is Raul Castro. Is there anything to be read into that? Is that significant?
I think baby steps. Baby steps. You know, this is a diplomatic dance. They like their music in Cuba. This is a diplomatic dance. The president doesn't want to go too fast, too far, and neither do the Cubans. They almost are on the same page in that regard. They both know that there's a lot at stake, but they both kind of need each other right now. The president he's opened up Pandora's box, and so now we have to see how this is all going to play out. And this is a gamble for President Obama. What if he gets here and this just doesn't work out? He just is.
Well, look, that's a real
crosshairs.
Lisandro Perez, let's bring you in here. This moment of him being on the tarmac is very real for you, but there's also something here that is not completely real, and that is the change in the embargo status, because politically, an executive order is only as good as the executive in office. Nothing legislative follows, it stays the way it is, but still, the significance to you of this wave from the president on Cuban soil.
Well, I think it's true that in other words, he can't really change the embargo, but in fact, I think this trip goes a long way towards trying to move the agenda. Let me just say, I am very surprised that Raul Castro is not there, and I think most Cubans watching this on television are probably also surprised. Raul Castro did meet the popes when they arrived in Cuba. It may be, like you say, a sort of political gambit, or if things go slow, but I am very surprised not to see Raul Castro there.
I think, as Jim was saying, baby steps. They said we would meet him with respectful hospitality, but they're not signs all over Havana welcoming the president like there were with the Pope. This is more controversial for the Cubans as well. What if the United States opens up, and because of the terrible economic mismanagement in this country, things don't get better for Cubans? Who do the Cubans then blame?
And there's also, I mean, the Cubans, while they're receiving President Obama, they still have billboards, propaganda billboards, as you're making your way from the airport to the city, that say bloquero with a noose. Instead of an O, there's a noose. They still are they're vehemently against this economic embargo that the U.S. has on Cuba here. They feel like that should be a part of these negotiations with the United States. The Cubans want Guantanamo back. You know, so there's still, as Patrick is saying, there might be some domestic political considerations here as to why Raul Castro is not here today.
But as you know, and again, you know, it's a great reporting context to have as a journalist that you've lived this situation in your own family. Yeah. Many people in America of Cuban descent do not like that President Obama is where he is right now. When you say Castro, they say oppressive regime, right. You know, human rights, dissidents, that people aren't just held down economically. It's about freedom here, and that complicates the situation because you can't have change just on one side.
No, that's right, and that's why the president has said, and the White House is making no bones about it, President Obama is going to talk about basic human rights here, the right to free speech, the right to freedom of the press, the right to assembly. And those rights are not universal in Cuba. There are things starting to happen. We have bloggers like Ioanni Sanchez, who's very popular on Twitter. The Cubans aren't throwing her in prison. Now, she does have little run-ins with them from time to time. But so things are starting to happen slowly but surely. The question I have, though, throughout the course of this trip is the words that President Obama uses. And that, I think, is going to go to what you're saying, Chris, about the Cuban Americans back in the United States. Will they feel President Obama was tough enough on the Cubans? That's why he's got this diplomatic dance to pull off.
Well, we also know that this isn't random. I'm not just talking the scheduling, I'm talking the strategy. We are told from people who are close to the president that he's thought a lot about what to say. Yeah. And that is one of the hallmarks of President Obama. He is a very thoughtful speaker in terms of delivering messages. So we can expect that. And when he says what he says and what he does not say here, it'll obviously be relevant, as is where he's going right now. Tell us, Patrick, what's the agenda?
Absolutely. So from here, he's going to drive into Havana. He will meet with the U.S. Embassy staff and their family. They actually couldn't do it at the U.S. Embassy. It's just too small for this delegation that's going along with President Obama. Over 1,200 people. Jim, you've got to think, I know you've covered so many presidential visits. You know, for Cuba, I've seen a lot of presidents, the Pope come here. I've never seen a visit that required so much of the Cuban government.
That's right.
Both sides have sort of been spinning for weeks about how do we get this done in a country with such limited resources. In a lot of ways, I think this is the White House showing off the power and the enormity of the United States. So we come with a delegation that no one has seen. We come with a plane that's bigger than anyone else has got, a car that is bigger than anyone else has got. But, you know, of course, the president is going to meet with Raul Castro. There'll be a bilateral meeting. There will be a dinner, a state dinner tomorrow night. But there are things that are probably steps too far, red lines for the president as well. They've said categorically he will not meet with former Cuban leader Fidel Castro.
No, Fidel.
That's just too much. This is a man many Americans look and say, he took away my home, he may have executed my relatives, and that is a meeting that the president can have. You can meet with the president, that's Raul Castro, but to meet with Fidel Castro, that would be insulting.
They don't want to stir up a hornet's nest here. It may be raining right now, but they don't want a hurricane, in other words. They want this to go very smoothly this week. The president's going to go to the cathedral to pay respects to the Pope's involvement in all of this, and then going to this baseball game on Tuesday. You know, I think cigars, you know, the president has been known to smoke a cigarette. He shoots the Nicorette gun more often than not, but maybe he'll light up a Cuban cigar. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to wait and see.
It's legal now.
It is legal now. He won't be breaking any rules.
And he doesn't have to inhale.
He doesn't have to inhale. That's true.
Not to wax Clinton-esque, but it's actually apt with a cigar.
The better if you do, though.
That's right. That's right. But, you know, and that's the message they want to get across to people back in the United States. It's the White House saying, come to Cuba. They're almost doing sort of a travel log. President Obama goes to Cuba. You know, Anthony Bourdain, you know, President Obama has Anthony Bourdain in Cuba a little bit. And
he's kind of dangling things in front of them as a
U.S.
Right. All of these people who are coming, big businesses, Starwood, potential for investment, potential to change the lives of people. It's literally being paraded before their eyes.
And it's the
baseball,
Cuban,
American baseball, you know, obviously the passion of this country and of America. The Rolling Stones here on Friday. You know, really the best of cultural kind of cooperation is going to be laid at their feet.
I think the message from President Obama is, okay, Cuba, here's your chance. We're rolling out, you know, we're pulling out all the stops. You're rolling out the red carpet, we're pulling out all the stops. And if you seize this opportunity, business will come. They don't have the Soviet Union anymore. They don't have Venezuela. The petrodollars are gone. This is Cuba's opportunity to really start moving in the 21st century, because really they're still frozen in time. They need this cash to come in. They're going to have to reciprocate, and I think that's why President Obama is going to be delivering that message all this week.
They used to say to the Cubans that they never miss an opportunity. They miss an opportunity. This is really the last chance. Fidel Castro wasn't able to get this done. His brother got less than 2 years in power. The transition isn't fully locked down. You know, Raul Castro is 84. Anything can happen at that age, and that would be, if there isn't
This is the window of opportunity.
This is a window, and it's closing every day.
Now, if you can see here, come on in real quick on Patrick's cufflinks. These were a gift from his wife, Cuban, by the way. So you see the American and the Cuban flag together. This was seen as a promise. This was a suggestion, and yet today we see those two flags on the car carrying the President of the United States on his way into Havana, Cuba.
And not just on the president's car, not just on my cufflinks, Cubans all over the city wearing American flags. Sometimes it's spandex, sometimes it's a t-shirt. Air fresheners now in the old cars.
I saw them flying over the baseball stadium. They're flying over the baseball stadium now. This is a new chapter. This is it. It's happening.
And as a Cuban citizen in the old days, in the 60s, wearing an American flag got you tossed in jail. Now, it's no big deal.
Rock and roll got you tossed in jail.
Yeah.
Now you got the Stones coming on Friday. So look,
You can't always get what you want, but sometimes if you try real hard, you get what you need. Is that the? Did I get it close?
Jim Acosta. Wow.
How do you translate that in Spanish?
Patrick, you're always the best. You're our man here in Cuba, but that was a strong finish by Acosta. Also to Alessandro Perez and Douglas Brinkley, thank you very much, and stay with us because this is just the beginning of a moment in history for the United States and Cuba. We'll be back live from Havana right after the break. You don't get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need.